folks? You're on the Average Angler, coming back at you with another great video. Today we're going to do a little bit of a tournament recap, but in the process of that, I'm going to give you some key locations to look for bigger fish, because that's what I did in the tournament. I'm going to share that information with you guys today, what I was catching them on. And remember, this was the Yamamoto Open, so you had to be using Yamamoto baits, okay? So not a problem. We did that at practice. We had a great time. Okay, if you're new to the channel, you like this kind of content, hit that subscribe button down below there. Join the Average Angler community. If you guys haven't already, make sure you hit that notification button. I have a feeling a lot of you aren't getting notified when my new videos come out. And I've been a little lackadaisical for a few days while I was gone to the tournament, and then it took me a little bit recovery time to kind of get the energy and not have other stuff to do around the house for the wife prior to having time to do videos. So here we are, we're back. First of all, conditions were pretty nice. It was a little chilly in the morning, but it got real nice each day. It got into the 70s. It was pretty calm for practice and pretty much let me run around wherever I wanted to fish on the lake. Now, where I usually get into trouble is most of the stuff that I tend to like to fish is very prone to wind. This tournament was no exception. And it got windy and it got stormy on tournament day, but that is what it is. I found in practice, out of about 120 to 150 spots I checked and went through, I found 3 that I had narrowed it down to for the tournament. Okay. These weren't the only 3 I was going to fish, but they were my primaries, and if things worked out, I would just rotate through the 3 of them, and was pretty darn confident that I could get somewhere in the range of 28 to 34 pounds. Now you're probably thinking, oh, you stuck that much in practice? No, I didn't stick them in practice. I did stick some. I mean, you got to stick a few to make sure that you're getting the size that you need. Okay, so anyway, I was in practice. I had several over 6, 5, bunch of 4s. Really what I felt like I needed, and the 6s were definitely on the same type of stuff. Now, I was fishing flats in 9 to 12 foot of water, but they dropped off into 25 to 30 feet real quick. My number one bait during practice was a search bait, and I kind of told you guys I would do this up front. I threw that cowboy on a swing head. Really like this setup for covering water, okay? It allows me to cover water. I can vary how it's being fished. You can just do a steady retrieve. You can change the speeds, faster, slower. You can pop it, you can hop it. And there's just so many options. It's a great way to find bites where there's groups of fish without overspending your time. I did also probe some things that were a little too sticky with the jig, and this was also in preparation for knowing something else I could get bit on. This is a sand tone 5/8 ounce football jig. There you see it there. The color is called Purple Haze. It's really kind of a watermelon candy type color. And I threw a blue craw, 4-inch Yama craw on the back. Now, I want to talk to you about the Yama craw because I had never fished it before. They come in 2 sizes, 3 and a 4-inch. All these are 3s. I got 4s in the boat. There is your 3-inch Yama craw in blue craw, but I want to show you this because to me this made a huge difference. And when I look at these right now, these don't look too small, but they are significantly smaller than the 4-inch. I mean, that is significant, right? This jig, when you are reeling it with that 4-inch Yama craw, will partially load your rod tip. It's the greatest thing ever. I really, really enjoyed fishing that 4-inch Yama craw. For those that don't know, I did a video a week ago or so in the pool, maybe now it's a week and a half ago, and showed you what that 4-inch Yamamoto did on the back of that jig. Basically stood that 5/8 ounce jig up at about an angle like this. Great defensive position. I think it's very natural. Now, I haven't done that with the 3-inch. I can tell you though that this, I can't feel it kicking on the back of the jig. Now, maybe if I went to a smaller jig, lighter jig, then I would notice it. I'm really getting into the realm there of the Beastie Bug. The Beastie Bug does all of that, and quite honestly, it comes in better colors. Now, we don't have a blue crayon Beastie Bug. Maybe we can work on that, because it is my favorite color. But this one has a little more presence. I really like the claws that are bigger. That was what I liked about the 4-inch Yamamoto, was the size and the presence, because this time of year, a lot of what I'm doing with the jig is popping it up, okay? And part of the reason for that is I'm fishing really sticky stuff. And if you just try and drag it, you're going to drag it into snags. Once you have to go out in the boat and go over the top of it to get your bait out, if you get your bait out, you could be shutting those fish off. So it's not something that I really want to do, is to drive over the top of where it is I'm fishing. Because of that, I'm popping the bait, okay, right? Pop, pop. I want that thing to jump off the bottom and then come back down. Most of the time, when I jumped off the bottom, they smacked it. And I caught numerous 4 to 6 pounders on that jig in different areas doing that technique. Now, most of them in practice came on the swing head, with the exception of a few. But this swing head would not be my preferred, quite honestly. I fished this because I had to, and I did not fish this except on tournament day, because quite honestly, the Strike King Rage Bug, Magnum Rage Bug, is just my confidence bait. It's something that I go out there and I know if they're around, if those fish are in those areas, they're going to bite it. So I caught a lot of them on the Strike King Rage Bug. Now look, I love Yamamoto baits. I like all kinds of baits. But there's just certain baits are better for certain presentations, if you know what I mean. And Yamamoto doesn't really have a great bait for the swing head. They have baits you can put on it, but that doesn't mean they're a great bait for the swing head. All right, so during the tournament, unfortunately, the wind turned on. And the predictions, the weather predictions, showed that we had basically until 10 o'clock. In the morning, it says it was going to be 5 to 6 out of the south, which wouldn't have been a big deal. It would have been blowing on my spots, but very, very little. And the lake doesn't get as big in that direction. Well, it wasn't blowing out of the south. It was blowing out of the west-northwest, which is the predominant wind on Clearlake, and it blows straight down the chute, right into everything I was fishing. But we still thought we had until 10 o'clock to fish, and I thought, that's plenty of time. We'll have our fish by then, and we can head up to the north end of the lake and get some pizza. Well, that's not what happened. The wind was blowing much stronger. I think it was probably 10 to 12 from the get-go. And probably by 8 o'clock, it was 14 to 16. And then there was some really, really strong gusts. And depending on which part of the lake you were on, we found that out later, the wind could be substantially different. Well, I was fishing the Narrows, so my assumption is the wind is accelerating through the Narrows because there's a narrower chute, that all that wind that started out this wide is now getting pushed through the chute this wide, and it's accelerating it. So anyway, we got to hit 2 spots, and then that was it. We were never able to get on any of the ones where we found the bigger fish the rest of the day. So we started to look for some areas that were similar, that were a little protected. So we found some, we caught some fish. It was really a struggle. I mean, that's one thing. When you're not around them, you're not getting bit. And then to have to use certain bait, like the spinner bait. They ate the spinner bait pretty good in practice. Mike was throwing a spinner bait. I think he got 6 to 8 fish on one little spot and was calling his shots. And then come tournament day, on the day where it was windy, they were eating it on a glass calm day. Now when it's windy, they don't want to eat it. So the weather, the storm, it had the fish off a little bit. You could tell by the way they were eating it. Mike was getting some bites on a spinner bait, but they weren't eating it. I was getting some bites on my jig and swing head, but they weren't committing to it. I did catch a couple that way, but not like they were. I mean, when they were eating it on Thursday and Friday, they'd knock 5 to 6 foot of slack in the airline, and you had to reel down to catch up to them to set the hook. So anyway, a little later in the day, I decided that what I was doing was not working. Yeah, it wasn't working. So we had to make a change. So in said change, I went to the Yamamoto creature bait. Very brush hog-like, if you will. I downsized my weight to a 1/4 ounce, which is lighter than I typically will flip at Clearlake. And I did that because it seemed like the bite was off a little bit. So I was just trying to slow the fall down, keep it in their face a little bit longer, but still have enough weight to deal with fishing in the wind. And that produced. I think I caught 5-6 fish in the last hour and a half. I had, most of those were not big fish. They were keepers, but they weren't big. One of the bites I got, I was pretty sure it was a big one. It stripped me of my bait. So that creature bait. The little ones were eating it all the way down, but I have a feeling, because when I set the hook, the rod loaded. I mean, it loaded with some weight there. And the little ones, when I set on them, they just come flying out of the water. Well, I got my hook back. The bait was completely gone, and I had a chunk of flesh on the hook from the fish's mouth. So it is what it is. That's tournament fishing. Some days go good for you. Some days they don't. That's the thing I like about fishing these specialty tournaments. When you're limited to certain baits, it can be very challenging, but you got to remember it's also the great equalizer. It sort of takes that home field advantage out a bit and just evens the playing field a bit more, because we all got to throw the same types of stuff. Yeah, it is what it is. If you look for me in the results, we threw our fish back. We knew we didn't have enough to get paid. There was really no sense in dealing with weigh-in and all that stuff. We went in, we checked in, we called it a day, and that was that. It was a little bit frustrating because we knew we were on the fish to win, and we just really didn't have the opportunity to fish them. That's the way the cookie crumbles, and that might be the difference between a local and someone who's not, like myself, or the lake's 4 hours away, is those guys may have had some areas to run to still get bit or be fishable. Now, I did have some areas to run. They weren't confirmed that they were producers. And because they were slightly protected, they were getting a lot of pressure from the other fishermen as well, because it was somewhere to fish that you could still fish. I mean, the stuff in the wind, I was casting into the wind, and the cast was going about 40 feet, and that's with a 3/4 ounce jig. It just doesn't work. You got to really get the bait out there, and fishing downwind most of the time doesn't work as well, or casting downwind doesn't work near as well to work it against the wind. We tried that too, trust me, we tried, it just didn't work out. So on to the next. That's fishing. I had a good time in practice. Got to play around with several bait. I had an idea that I was going to fish this combination here. This is a Yamamoto hula skirt. It's a double skirt. So this bait is sold by itself. Well, it used to be sold by itself. It's discontinued. And then I was going to fish my beastie bug on the back. Because, quite honestly, that color's phenomenal. That's the Mad Hatter. Phenomenal color, and I wasn't really sure that it would be legal. I felt like it was kind of pushing the boundaries, so I just left that at home, went and dealt with what I had to deal with. And quite honestly, they had some good baits, not necessarily what I would always choose. So I made a separate video about this. This is a Yamamoto, not real sure how to say it, Sandshoe. This is rigged up on a dart head. And I never really ran into the situation where I like to do this. But I'm going to share it with you guys today because you stayed around to the end of the video and you deserve some juice. But this is really good when you can get over the top of deep fish. Okay? Say deep enough so that they don't mind you being over the top of them. Typically, that's going to be between 25 to 30 feet. I will fish it down to 40. That dart head just does some really cool things with this body. You've got the real flat body through here, and then that tail turns the other way. I relay this to a salamander, and for some reason, it works real well that way. You can do all kinds of things with this. They like this as a flipping bait in Clearlake in the spring. I didn't try it while we were there. I had the dart head rigged up to try in case I could get over the tops of any deeper fish. They really weren't moving around down in those rocks. I could catch them with the jig by causing a reaction, but if you got over the tops and graphed them, they were very difficult to see if you could see them at all. And you'd probably have to sit over the top of them and wait for them to move, and then maybe you'd pick it up. But otherwise, with 2D or down scan, I just wasn't able to separate those fish that were laying on the bottom. Anyway, if you guys get an opportunity to do the Yamamoto tournament, they say they're coming back next year. I'll be there again. It's a fun tournament to do, and sometimes it takes you a little bit to learn how to practice and line up for fish. With weather changes, wind conditions, all that kind of stuff. And once you figure it out, things get a little easier. All right, I'm Sean, the Average Angler. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.